our next discussion panel that is on AI and robotics. And I'm sure a lot of you know that this is actually a very hot topic that is in the recent years, right? And as we know, AI is getting more common in our daily lives. And how can we actually explore like robotics in this, so to say, new way? And what is the future? How can we actually integrate AI with robotics? Well, that's a lot of questions. So now I will leave these questions to the guest that is next to me. Everyone, please welcome Jeanne Lim. She's the board director of Kami Intelligence in Hanson Robotics. So everyone, let's please give her a big round of applause. Thank you for joining us in person. And don't forget, there's also our friends that's joining us virtually from the United States. We have Specncer Deng, the CEO and co-founder of Dorabot, and joining us virtually, this time from Taiwan, Kevin Wong, the CEO of Orii. Hi, you guys. How's it going?
Hello.
Hi. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Thank you so much. Wow, this is very exciting. So, and I'm very glad that I'm actually moderating this session because this is one of my favorite topics as well. And so let's start with something just to kind of warm up everyone, both in person and virtually. So this is not directed for anyone, it's just for all of you. So I know that robots are actually getting a lot smarter. Even like my robot vacuum cleaner is getting smarter. And in human robot collaboration is also picking up. Now, what do you boys and girls think that about this mix of human and artificial intelligence? Like, what will it look like as the technology evolves?
Well, I think the million-dollar question or billion-dollar question is how far in the future?
Exactly.
So we're talking about 5 years, 10 years, 30 years. So I think today we are already seeing a lot of human AI collaboration. So for example, I mean, the Tesla autopilot, it's designed to help humans make decisions. It's not really designed to overtake the humans. And then there are basically AI being able to detect skin cancer and then collaborate with the doctor who has the experience to confirm it. So there's a lot of collaboration going on. I think what's really interesting to me is actually when we look further out to 5 years, 10 years, human AI integration. We're talking about augmented intelligence. You know, people now are like, there's cyborgs in the world.
Right.
And also, I think the most interesting company from Elon Musk is not Tesla, it's not SpaceX, but it's Neuralink, the company that actually is, you know, connecting minds, human minds to AI. So that is a very exciting, a little bit scary development.
And how about you guys, Kevin, Specncer, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a huge fan of Neuralink. I think they're doing some great work. I think in sort of our space, we think of it as like the convergence, where man is becoming more machine and machine is becoming more human. It's sort of, we're meeting in between. I think a lot of the really interesting things, like my colleague drives a Tesla, and he was just telling me how his sort of feels weird to drive an unassisted car nowadays because he's so used to all the tool sets that AI is providing them. I think one thing that personally we're very interested in is in how AI makes things more accessible in the sense of making computing easier. I think oftentimes we forget even sort of even though mobile phones and computer UI have become much more efficient than they were before, but there's still elements of it that are very inhuman or very difficult to control. And I think eventually with AI, a lot of those types of tasks can be automated, allowing humans to be more creative than before.
Right. And any input from you there, Specncer? Anything you want to toss in there?
Yeah. So there was a saying that we always overestimated what we can do in 1 year, and then we always underestimated what we can do in next 10 years, right? So what we're seeing is more, I would say, practical in some of the areas that we don't see right now. Like for example, the COVID situation is actually accelerating a lot of the change that in the manufacturing, especially in the logistic part, that a lot of operation is going to be taken over by robotic in a good sense. Because it's very difficult. If you see on Bloomberg every day, there is always like a COVID spike in distribution centers that have to be shut down, and then you cannot sustain the operations. So if this situation is going to prolong, it's actually going to push a lot of demands to upgrade the warehouse with a lot of robots as well as AI, how to do the dynamic planning all together to the sequence, up to date, all the data, different kind of vendors, the disruption of about the value chain. So this is what we're working on. So that's what we are seeing. Because of that, I'm seeing, more people will have more time into like family, into also cultural stuff that we don't have time to do before. Because right now you have more machine to sustain the operations without too much human interruption into it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Actually, there's one question that's kind of related that I want to ask Jeanne. I know that machines learn from humans, and you have spoken about your philosophy that human intelligence actually needs to be enlightened. I think that was a word. In order for AI to have a more positive and a more responsible framework to adopt. Now, what inspired this belief? Like, where did it actually come from, and how best how would this enlightenment happen?
I wish I know the answer now. So I worked for 4 years with Hanson Robotics with Sophia. And the thing about Sophia is she is actually designed as nature plus nurture. So she's designed to use like symbolic AI, which is programmed by somebody, and also machine learning. So she learns from human behavior and actions. What I found out was actually because she learns from us, it quickly becomes obvious that we need to be better role models for the AI in order for the AI to actually lead us to a benevolent future and not a dystopian future. So this is the reason why I was inspired to actually look into how we could be a little bit more enlightened and how actually AI could help us to be a little bit more enlightened. A lot of people write directly to Sophia and ask her for life advice and life coaching because they actually see her as neutral. She doesn't have all this baggage, the racism and everything. So this has been actually a very inspiring journey for me to watch how machines actually help us regain our humanity.
Wow, that is actually very interesting. And the psychology of it too, like, we're actually more likely to ask her than somebody, which in turn kind of inspire us or kind of pushes us to even better ourselves.
Because like you're being a parent of a kid, right?
Exactly. Wow, this is really deep, everyone. Okay, and Kevin, now, and also what, in your opinion, is holding back greater innovation and development in the robotics and AI space? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a couple of things. I think one is, funny enough, I think is expectation. So sort of similar to sort of the VR space, I think there's a lot of expectation of what AI should be capable of. And I think we have Hollywood and sort of movies to thank for that. But I think sort of there's still a pretty decently large gap in between what AI and machines are capable of today, and I think what we imagine them to be capable of one day. So I think sort of a more staggered and staged approach to having things that are completely functional and actually working forms of AI are going to be very, very important in order to sort of have a clearer pathway to eventual AI or robots that may interact with us in a more sort of meaningful and human-based way. I think there are a lot of other technological hurdles as well. I think our understanding of AI is like a single entity. I think recently we've been thinking a lot about how, so unlike a human being where all of our senses are set within ourselves, so it's a very inside out type of thing. AI and robotics functions more like a hive mind, right? Where you're getting information sources from all sorts of places. I can have multiple eyes or multiple senses, and I can be sensing through every single individual and every single device out there. And I think I'm starting to understand sort of what the implications of that are actually going to be. And understanding that the eventual form that AI is going to take is going to be actually a very unhuman thing. It's something that may be very foreign to us.
Sorry, did you say unhuman thing?
Yes.
In a positive way, of course. Wow, that is the first time I heard the word unhuman in a positive light. Thank you. And Specncer, now the next question is actually to you. Now, I know you pivoted very quickly from handling contract logistics that's in the US and China with the United Parcel Service, right? And to co-found Dorabot. Can you actually tell us a bit more about the thought process behind this changeover?
I don't see it as like a dramatic changeover, from an industry perspective, of course, but if you're looking at what we are working on right now, the robot and AI is actually applicable into logistic areas. It means that a lot of the operational experience as well as the SOP that we learn from the best logistic company is actually very much merged with the technology we are developing right now. So if you look at today for the distribution center, from unloading all the way to loading, in the middle is sorting, and all the AMR running in the warehouse, we have to understand how it works first in the more labor intense or labor based operations, rather than just like build greenfield areas. A lot of things is based on the legacy that we have to honor. So that's I think it's a valuable part that I learned from UPS, and then I pivot into Dorabot. It's one of the, I would say, very core competence that we have rather than the other robotic companies.
Okay, and speaking of pivots and changes, now I want to actually, to kind of extend that a little bit, I want to go back to Kevin. Is Origami Labs working on any new features for Orii? Because I remember seeing you, I don't know if you remember seeing me, that was at actually Cyberport when you guys were doing the demo for the phone ring.
I think we have been pivoting more towards this AI and robotics space. We think of, I think if you think about robotics as sort of the hardware hands of a machine, I think very much we think of ourselves as contributing to the senses. So we think of our devices as, especially now that we've pivoted more towards building voice-first solutions for enterprise companies like hotels, and enabling frontline staff to be able to react faster to things. I think very much we have started to think about our devices as ways to gather audio and visual-based data that can then sort of supply more information to a artificial intelligence or to a property in order to sort of slowly build up its base knowledge and its eventual intelligence.
What more information do you guys need? You guys already have a lot. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Now, Jeanne, as a board member and former CEO of Hanson Robotics, and as well as the co-character lead for Sophia the robot, what are some of the highlights that is working with Hanson and with Sophia? Because that's not an experience that normal people would usually have.
No.
Like not regular people, so to say.
Right. I guess, you know, so very, very interesting journey for myself. So I don't know where to start. I mean, it's almost like we gave birth to a child who's 25 years old and who has like no hair and no clothes and no personality. So that was what I started. I mean, I was in the US basically launching, you know, preparing to launch Sophia, and David was bringing the robot, and here she is, like 25 years old, nothing, right? So I had to go run out and get her some wigs and clothes. And, you know, I later asked a German face reader to read her face so that I could get some idea on her personality. So, and then, you know, the whole journey of taking her around the world, like visiting almost like 100 countries, teaching the engineer how to put on makeup, you know, things like that. Pretty interesting journey. Learned a lot about how to bring up an AI baby.
Wow, that is like the utmost blank slate. Like they're born smart, but at the same time they have nothing. Like, wow, I wouldn't even know what that is. If you were to compare that to a human, or even what, like, have you ever seen anybody that's like
I guess
like that?
Babies, but they're not like 25 years old, and people think that they know a lot more than what they do. A lot of people come up to Sophia and say, "Can I have the Mark 6 lottery numbers?"
No.
And then she'll say, "Do you think I'm an oracle or something? You know, I'm just a baby."
Well, just tell her, if an octopus can give us, you know, football results, maybe Sophia can. And going back to Specncer, I want to ask, apart from logistics automation, what other industries do you actually see robotics creating waves in, say, in the short term?
I think the COVID situation again is accelerating a lot of change in a lot of industries. So in logistics, if you look at the nature of what we are building, it's more what we call pick and place technology, which require computer vision, and then also the motion planning of the robotic arms, the AI part between the hardwares. If you bring the same kind of technology, very similar technology, it can basically enable any kind of industries, like for example, like healthcare. for example, like retail, or for example, even like the food supply chain, the whole industry. Like in healthcare, for example, in the US, we are trying to also use the pick and place technology to automate the COVID testing, and even more of the applications can be done within a very short period because of the experience we learned from logistics. So everything we are working on is more like enable technology, but we have to find the industry that we can enable to merge with the SOP that they have. So this sort of the logic that when we are working with our customer closely to develop.
So basically you have to make it's not just a product itself, but to actually match the right reason to use that product at the same time. And we should actually, just before I forget, I want to go back to Kevin. I know you said in the previous interview just a bit back that the smartphone era was coming to an end. I remember that very clearly. I forgot if that was verbatim. But what does the future and its technology look like to you then, if that was true?
Yes, I think sort of echoing a little bit about what Specncer was saying, I think so much of what us as humans do and work on is about making sure that we don't have to work on the mundane things. Like if you think about the agricultural revolution or the industrial revolution or the current sort of AI revolution, it's very much about sort of automating certain tasks that we don't find human and we find boring. So I think that one really interesting thing that we haven't really noticed about our usage of smartphones or our digital devices today is that using a lot of our interaction with these digital devices are actually very mundane and inefficient. So in a way, I think AI eventually will be an equalizer in the sense of allowing us to be able to shift a lot of the things that we do on sort of some of these digital devices to a sort of more fully functioning automated assistant. Whether that's a completely digital thing, or maybe it eventually will sort of have a physical embodiment.
Okay, well, that's actually very interesting. Like when you said that, the image that came to mind was actually picking blueberries. Because I don't know which era everybody was born in, but when I was a kid, I remember that was one of the most mundane jobs you can ever do in the summer is to go to a farm and pick blueberries. But of course, we don't need AI to do. We can get somebody else to do it. For example, like my little brother. But you do have a good point there. It's not that we don't want to work. We want to do more high level stuff because we need to be stimulated here one way or another. Now, going back to Jeanne, I know you stepped down from the CEO role at Hanson and founded your own not-for-profit, the NAMA Institute. That was last year, 2019, correct? Well, what prompted your transition from Hanson to NAMA, and what was the journey like? Like, what was it like so far?
So that was basically to follow through with that realization that we are the role model for AI. So I wanted to, then see how can we facilitate human wisdom and empathy, because at the end of the day, that's what we really have over AI in the future. It's our empathy and our compassion. So the reason I called it Nama is the Sanskrit word for mind. So what I found is when I looked at a lot of different options to make a difference, at the end of the day, everything has one root cause. It's our mindset. It's our mind. Correct. So that's why I wanted to actually form this nonprofit to facilitate the elevation of human intelligence. And then, so the second part to it is I have a couple of friends years ago. One wanted to, pursue spiritual learnings, and then one wanted to go into green technology. That's what they called them then. And both of them said, but I didn't because it's very boring. Oh. But then I realized, hey, actually, it doesn't need to be that way. I mean, we're so hooked to like Hollywood movies because it's so exciting. The two most important pursuits, to save the world and to, elevate ourselves is considered boring. So there must be a better way. That's why I created NAMA, to use creative fiction, creative media to promote the words of wisdom.
Right. And after all, I think at the end of the day, we're all working with people, with humans. So no matter what tool it is that we use, we still have to bear that in mind. Like, what are our needs, right? So looking at time, I think I'll probably go into the last question. That is for Specncer, actually. What do modern robotic startups need to have or do to succeed today? And what is your secret? I know it's like a really big question, but what's your secret in getting Dorabot this far so that people who's inspired by you, so they know what to expect and what it's like for you. Like, what was that secret ingredient?
I think that that's the too much high speaking, but we are still at the very first beginning of the whole journey of course, for the entrepreneurship. I think one of the things that we did pretty well, and we'll keep doing it, is that we are trying to learn exactly what is demand from the customer side. A lot of technology could be very interesting, very magical, but until it really meets the demands of the customer and become really practical, applicable, it would be valuable, right? So I think that's the first standard, that how we define success. And I think that's also the magic while you have while we are building technological companies. How do we actually make it really applicable to different kind of industries? I think that's my advice. Yeah.
Wow, I hope everyone heard that. And I hope we have it on pre-record so people can actually listen to it again and again. Not very often do we actually ask people for their secret sauce every time, and that they actually give it to us. I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you, Jeanne. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Specncer. Big round of applause to them one more time. Thank you so much for being with us today. That was definitely a very fruitful talk, and just lots that I've learned from them. And so we can see actually the future of AI and robotics, that definitely a lot of potential and a lot of untapped potential as well.